I always thought betrayal arrived loudly, with slammed doors, raised voices, or cold, sharp glares. Mine came quietly, with a soft buzz on the nightstand. It was 11:47 p.m. I was awake, counting down the hours until the trip my husband and I were taking the next morning for our 35th anniversary. He slept beside me, breathing in that slow, peaceful way that always made him seem steady. Safe. But not that night. Something made me reach for his phone. One message. One sentence. One clean, merciless cut. Let me know when she's gone. The sender was Emily, my closest friend for 2 decades, my daughter's godmother, the woman I trusted with every part of my life. I blinked once, twice, then again, hoping the words would rearrange into something that didn't destroy me. They didn't. For a moment, the room felt unreal, like the air had been sucked out. My pulse pounded so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. I didn't scream. I didn't shake him awake. I placed the phone back carefully, as though the betrayal inside it might spill out if I dropped it. A wave of heat surged through me, then ice, then nothing at all. I looked at the man I'd loved for more than half my life, sleeping like innocence itself. That was when I realized hell isn't fire, it's silence. It's watching everything you thought you knew dissolve in a single moment. My suitcase sat open across the room, filled with clothes I had packed for a trip meant to rekindle us. A trip to bring us closer. Meanwhile, he had already drifted somewhere else, straight into Emily's arms. There had been signs, of course. Soft glances. Halted conversations. Moments when the room shifted in a way I couldn't quite explain. But love has a way of begging you not to see the truth. And I had listened obediently. That night, I made a decision. No confrontation. No begging. No tears. If they thought I was blind, they were about to learn exactly how wrong they were. The next morning, I rose before him, made breakfast, and kept my face calm. When he wrapped his arms around me from behind and said, "Ready for our trip, honey?" I didn't flinch. "Ready," I answered, my voice steady, almost foreign to my own ears. If you love real emotional stories, hit subscribe, we post one every day. As he rambled about the resort, the restaurants he wanted to try, and the perfect beach weather waiting for us, I watched him with new eyes, not loving, not broken, but calculating. Every word he uttered became part of a blueprint forming quietly in my mind. I didn't need a confrontation. I needed patience. Before we left, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. I didn't look like a woman unraveling. I looked like someone who had finally stepped out of a fog. During the drive to the airport, he reached for my hand. His fingers trembled slightly. "You okay?" he asked. "Perfect," I said, offering a soft smile that hid everything boiling beneath. The flight passed in silence. I pretended to read, but my mind was racing, replaying moments, recognizing every lie, stitching together the truth they thought I'd never discover. And as the pieces clicked into place, I felt a sharp, calm certainty settle over me. I would watch. I would wait. And when the moment came, I would act. When we reached the resort, Michael stepped up to the front desk and asked for the room he'd booked, his tone steady and self-assured, as if confidence could erase the truth already carved into my memory. I simply nodded, offering a polite smile to the clerk as she handed me the key card. In the elevator, the soft humming from Michael filled the space while the mirrored walls showed 2 people who looked like they barely knew each other. I stared straight ahead, counting down the floors, timing each breath. When we entered the room, everything was arranged with romantic precision, roses on the table, a bottle of chilled wine, and a handwritten note welcoming us as a special couple. I widened my eyes just enough to sell the performance. "What a sweet touch," I said lightly. "You deserve it," he answered, kissing my forehead with the same lips that whispered to someone else. His affection had the hollow scent of luxury cologne layered over guilt. While he showered, I stood by the window. Outside, the coastline stretched out in soft lights and soft waves, the harbor town pier glowing like it had 25 years ago when we'd first come here. Back then, he'd promised he would never hurt me. Now, this place was about to become the setting where I proved just how deeply he had. But I wasn't here to rage. I wasn't here to break down. I wanted precision. I wanted quiet. I wanted truth. When he stepped out of the bathroom, steam trailing behind him, I faked a yawn. "I'm exhausted," I murmured. "Rest up, sweetheart. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." "Yes," I said softly. "It will." When the room finally went dark and his breathing settled, I waited. At 12:30 a.m., I eased his phone from the nightstand and guided his finger across the screen. There it was. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. same resort. She'll be gone by then. A pinned location. This resort. This room. It was almost poetic how carelessly they'd set their own trap. I locked the phone, placed it back where it had been, and allowed myself a small smile. They thought I was wandering blindly through my life, but they'd forgotten something important. The quiet ones watched the most closely. I didn't sleep. I planned. Emily would arrive at 10. Michael would slip away, assuming I was off shopping or having breakfast. But I'd be exactly where I needed to be. I checked the small camera I always carried, adjusted the settings, and set everything in place. By 9:30 the next morning, I was dressed, calm, and ready. I left the door to our room slightly open. The first move in my silent game. At breakfast, we sat across from each other like any married couple on vacation. He talked easily, about scenic routes, rising prices, the humidity, while I watched the man who believed his secrets were safe. Every smile was another layer of varnish over something rotting. As I stirred my coffee, memories tugged at me. The first time I met Emily, 1994, a modest house in a quiet Atlanta neighborhood, 2 toddlers clinging to my legs. She'd knocked on my door holding a carrot cake and wearing the kind of warm smile that made you feel instantly seen. From that day forward, she threaded herself into my life, one kindness, one shared afternoon, one heartfelt conversation at a time. She was the comforting presence when Michael worked late, the helping hand when my kids caught fevers, the friend who always knew how to show up. But somewhere along the way, while I trusted her completely, she began shaping the betrayal that would one day land in my lap like a blade. I still remember the exact moment I first caught her looking at Michael differently. It was during a family barbecue, nothing special, nothing dramatic. But the way her eyes lingered on him just a second too long. That was the first crack I chose not to see. Michael had been at the grill that afternoon, the smoke curling around him as he flipped burgers and laughed with the neighbors. It was one of those easy summer days when everything felt light, until it didn't. Emily walked over with a glass of wine for him, casual, effortless. When she handed it to him, her fingers brushed his. Just for a second. But that second made something inside me tighten like a pulled thread. There was a look in her eyes, quiet, warm, lingering. A look a woman gives a man she is already thinking about too much. And Michael didn't pull back. He met her eyes. Held them for 3 long seconds. Those 3 seconds changed the way the air around us felt. They changed the way I looked at both of them from that day on. After that barbecue, I started noticing things I couldn't unsee, messages that vanished from his phone, calls he took outside, new reasons to run errands alone. Little things, subtle things, but enough to sour the peace in our home. "You're overthinking it, Laura," Emily had told me once when I confided in her. "Men get distracted. It doesn't mean anything." She said it so naturally that I believed her. I was confessing my fears to the very person feeding them. The irony still stings. Time passed, and the distance between Michael and me widened in ways we never spoke about. He became harder, sharper around the edges. Some nights he would hug me without really being there. Other nights, he wouldn't touch me at all. But I stayed. Women around me had been raised to believe you preserve your marriage no matter what, that silence keeps a family whole. So I kept silent. And in that silence, the betrayal grew roots. At the resort breakfast, I watched him with the calmness of someone who had finally given up pretending. I didn't see my husband. I saw a stranger I'd memorized out of habit. "You okay?" he asked, noticing I hadn't said much. "Just tired," I answered. "You can rest after breakfast." "Oh, I will," I murmured, letting the hidden meaning sit quietly between us. After we finished eating, we walked along the shoreline. To anyone else, we looked like a picture-perfect couple, his arm around me, my smile soft. But inside, a storm churned. He talked about how much he'd needed this trip. "I've felt so disconnected from us lately," he admitted. "Me too," I said gently. "But don't worry. Soon everything will be back where it belongs." If only he'd understood what I meant. That afternoon, I slipped away under the pretense of buying souvenirs. Really, I needed space to think. The resort village bustled with life, laughter, bright colors, families taking photos, a stark contrast to the numbness inside me. In a quiet corner by a fountain, I opened my phone and forwarded the screenshots of the messages I'd found to a private email account. Evidence. Insurance. Then I installed a recording app on his phone, quick, quiet, automatic. My plan was no longer a haze. It was sharp. That night, Michael toasted to us at dinner, smiling like a man who believed he still owned the truth. His words sounded rehearsed, hollow, but I played along. Later, while he slept, a new message lit up his screen. "All set. See you at 10:15. Use the spare keycard. You know where it is." It was almost laughable how neatly their affair lined up, like they wanted to be caught by someone willing to pay attention. I watched him sleep for a long moment before turning off the lamp. I felt tenderness, strangely. Not the kind born from love, but the kind you feel when something is ending, when you're ready to walk away without breaking. I realized I wasn't just chasing vengeance. I was reclaiming myself. My dignity. My voice. As the room dimmed, a calm certainty settled in my chest. Tomorrow would rewrite everything. Silence would be my weapon, and the truth my vindication. The sunrise spilled across the resort in a strange, almost eerie brightness. The ocean shimmered serenely, but the air felt heavy with the promise that today would not be ordinary. I woke before Michael. The light barely touched the curtains, and the room smelled of fading flowers and that foreign cologne he always wore. I watched him sleep, his chest rising and falling steadily, but the man beneath my gaze was no longer the husband I knew. I saw only the performer who had played the role too long. For the first time in years, I didn't feel pain. I felt sharp, clear focus. Slowly, I reached for the notepad in the drawer and scribbled a note. "Today, I will show you exactly who I am." I placed it under the pillow, where he would later rest his head. Then I faced myself in the mirror. My eyes were awake. My face, though tired, carried resolve. I wasn't broken. I was ready. Every step of the plan ran through my mind, the camera, the recording app, the secured emails, every detail checked and rechecked. This wasn't impulse. This was the product of hours spent thinking, calmly, without tears. At 9, Michael stirred. "Sleep well?" he asked. "Perfectly," I lied smoothly. "We could walk to the pier later, maybe have lunch together," he suggested. "Sure," I said lightly, "but first I want to visit the spa. Need to unwind a bit." He nodded, none the wiser. I kissed him lightly and left, carrying the small camera in my purse, a serenity I didn't fully understand settling over me. The spa overlooked the top floor, near the most luxurious suites. I sat in the waiting area pretending to read a magazine, while my eyes kept discreet watch on our room. The plan was simple: pretend to leave the door slightly ajar, just enough for him to think I was gone. By 9:45, I was in the room, positioning the camera in a corner of the closet with a perfect view of the bed. I adjusted the angle, tested the sound, ensured the feed was uninterrupted. Technology had become my silent ally. From the suitcase, I pulled out the blue dress he always said looked stunning on me. Too good, he claimed, for someone my age. I smiled. I would wear it. Not for him, but for the dignity of closing the circle on my own terms. At 10 o'clock, everything was set. The door remained slightly open. I stepped into the hallway, hiding behind a column, heart pounding with anticipation, not fear. By 10:10, footsteps approached. His voice, unmistakable, carried through the hall. "Yes, Emily, come now." "Just left." My hands grew cold. Even knowing what was coming, hearing it still cut like a knife. The door opened. Brief silence, then his voice. "You look amazing, as always." And hers, soft, familiar. "I can't believe we pulled this off," Emily whispered. I didn't need to see them. I knew them, two people confusing lust for love, lies for freedom. Laughter, murmured words, the telltale sound of a stolen kiss. The camera captured it all, dispassionate and exact. I watched, a strange blend of fury and vindication coursing through me. Then Emily's voice broke the quiet. "What if she finds out?" "She won't," he replied. "She's too trusting, too blind." "Poor Laura." Emily laughed. "Not poor, naive," he corrected. 2 words. And they cut deeper than any scream ever could. Naive. That's what they thought I was. They mistook my silence for weakness, my composure for ignorance. But that misjudgment would be their undoing. I lingered in the hallway until I heard the room door click shut behind Emily. Michael stayed inside a few moments longer, maybe replaying the encounter in his mind, before rushing out as if someone might catch him. I waited a heartbeat, then stepped inside. The air was heavy, tainted with perfume and guilt. I faced myself in the mirror. My eyes held the memory of what I had seen, but I refused to let tears fall. I moved to the closet and stopped the recording. The camera blinked once, saving every moment. I reviewed the footage. There they were. Laughing, touching, deceiving, everything laid bare. I sat on the bed, phone in hand, tempted for a fleeting second to delete it all. To let it go, to pretend the betrayal never existed. But no. That stage was done. I sent the video to my private email, along with the previous proof. Pressing send was a release. Years of humiliation, of quiet suffering, drained away in a single moment. I packed the camera away, closed the suitcase, and left for the lobby, needing fresh air. The ocean stretched endlessly, the sky clear above. I walked along the pier, the wind brushing my face. I thought of Emily, how effortlessly she had crept into my life, stealing what never belonged to her. Then I thought of myself, and the realization was fierce. I had allowed others to control my life for too long. I stopped at the edge of the pier and whispered to the horizon, "No more." That vow was mine alone. I would no longer wait for answers. I would no longer swallow my dignity to uphold an empty marriage. From that moment forward, I would be the architect of their downfall. Returning to the resort, I found Michael at the bar, pretending to be on a business call. He looked up and waved. "Honey, how was the spa?" "Wonderful," I said, a faint smile brushing my lips. "I feel refreshed." We sat together with wine in hand. He spoke of the weather, trivial work matters, plans for the evening. I listened, noting how effortlessly he lied, how perfect his act appeared, unaware that the curtain had already fallen. That night, I slept deeply, without the tremors of doubt or fear. I knew the next day would begin the reckoning. When I closed my eyes, the naive, silent Laura of the past was gone. Tomorrow, I would awaken someone new. Someone unafraid of losing him, because the truth had already stripped him of my heart. The next morning arrived with a quiet intensity. I rose, pretending calm. Michael slept on his back, his face still carrying the illusion of innocence that had fooled me for decades. I lingered, trying to remember the last time love had felt effortless. I couldn't. Love had burned quietly, flickering out over time. And now the flame was gone. I drew back the curtains and let the sunlight flood the room. "Good morning," I said, my voice too ordinary to betray anything. "Morning, honey," he replied, stretching as though guilt could not touch him. While he showered, I checked the camera I had hidden the day before. Its green light blinked patiently, ready to bear witness. Breakfast passed without incident, his chatter about a boat ride, the evening's dinner, the nearby beach, meaningless words floating past my focused attention. His chatter was trivial, almost irritating in its banality. I nodded, smiled politely, playing the part of a woman distracted by a magazine, a quiet actress in a story I already knew. But behind that calm facade, my mind was sharp, calculating every movement. Everything had to be precise. No mistakes. No extra words. The trap needed to snap exactly when they felt safest. At 9, Michael said he needed to go down to the lobby to confirm a reservation. He brushed my cheek with a kiss and pocketed his phone. I stayed seated, pretending to read, watching him leave. The door clicked shut, leaving the room filled with a different kind of silence. It wasn't emptiness. It was power. For the first time, the quiet belonged to me. I waited a few minutes, then approached the door, opening it just a sliver to glance into the hallway. Empty. But the air told me the call had already been made. I returned inside, grabbed my purse, and slipped down the hallway to a small service door leading to the side staircase. Behind it, I had the perfect vantage point. A mirror in the corner allowed me to see without being seen. My heart raced, not with fear, but anticipation. By 10:15, she arrived. Emily, once my friend, now the intruder, wore a muted beige dress, elegant, unassuming, innocent in appearance if not in intent. Her stride was purposeful, eyes forward, careful not to look around. Michael appeared moments later, greeting her with a smile so natural it burned. "You have no idea how much I've missed this," he murmured. "Keep your voice down," she whispered. "Laura thinks I went to the lobby." I bit back a bitter laugh. They thought they had me fooled. They were about to discover they had miscalculated. They entered the room. The lock clicked shut, the cue for their private theater to begin. From my hidden spot, I watched the reflection in the mirror across the window. Every movement, every gesture, every word was visible. They hugged, whispered, laughed with that easy complicity that only liars share when they assume no one is watching. I remained steady, my breathing controlled, my hands calm. I wasn't trembling or crying. I was awake, watching a story I had written long ago come to life. Michael's voice carried across the room. "You don't know what I had to put up with last night." Emily laughed, mockingly gentle. "Sleeping with her must have been punishment. But soon it will be ours." She rested her hand on his chest, casually, possessively. Rage surged inside me, a wave I forced down. Not yet. Every word, every movement, was being captured. The camera was patient, as I had been for years. Emily crossed her legs on the bed, playful, cautious. "What if she finds out?" "She won't," he replied. She believes only what she wants. You always underestimated her, Emily said. And he agreed, quietly, I wasn't wrong. That sentence cut deeper than any confession ever could. It confirmed the truth I had feared, that for years, my silence had fed their deception. My hands sweated, but it wasn't fear. It was measured, controlled fury, old fire finally finding its outlet. I stayed hidden for over 10 minutes, watching them. Laughter, kisses, intimate murmurs. The camera captured every second. At 10:30, Emily finally rose. See you tonight, she said, adjusting her hair in the mirror. I love you, he whispered. I love you too, he had whispered. Emily closed the door behind her and left. Michael lingered for a few minutes, scrolling through his phone. I stepped back silently, waiting until he finally exited the room. A few minutes later, he walked away, his usual careless swagger in place. I entered the room. The perfume lingered faintly in the air. The half-empty wine bottle on the table. The glass with a smudge of lipstick. The unmade bed. Every detail screamed the truth. I went to the closet, turned off the camera, and watched the footage. There they were, laughing, touching, betraying, all captured with ruthless precision. I didn't shed a single tear. Instead, a strange serenity filled me, as if years of quiet suffering had crystallized into strength. I turned off the screen, stashed the camera deep in my purse, and walked down to the lobby, ready to wield the weapon they had unknowingly given me. Michael was at the bar, pretending to check emails. I approached with a friendly smile. Did you confirm the reservation? I asked. Yes, he muttered, avoiding my gaze. All set. I patted his shoulder lightly. Perfect, I said. Tonight will be unforgettable. He smiled, completely unaware of the gravity behind my words. That afternoon, I locked myself in the bathroom with my laptop. I downloaded the files and uploaded them to a secure private cloud. Then I sent the video to 3 carefully chosen recipients, his office downtown, his business partner who had always looked at me with a hint of pity, and to Emily's husband, Thomas. There was no turning back. I didn't want to. When night fell, I slipped into the blue dress he had always adored. I studied myself in the mirror and breathed deeply. I was no longer the woman gripped by fear that morning. I was free. The Laura who had felt fear and hesitation was gone. The Laura who would enter the dining room tonight was someone new, someone who understood that sometimes truth alone is the deadliest weapon. And that truth was already on its way, traveling by email, carrying every word, every stolen touch, every lie. Tomorrow, everyone would see who they really were. And when the storm hit, I would be gone, silent and untouchable. The sunrise brought no peace. The ocean gleamed placidly, but inside me, a tempest swirled, barely contained. I knew this day would mark a before and after. By 6 a.m., I was awake, sitting by the window, watching waves crash against the rocks below. Michael slept, oblivious. He had no idea that his life would unravel in just hours. The quiet was so dense I could hear my own heartbeat. Every second reminded me that the moment was imminent. I didn't feel fear. I felt a frozen calm, the kind that comes when a person resolves never to look back. By 7:30, I went to breakfast alone. He was either still asleep or pretending to be. I poured my coffee, opened my notebook, and wrote one line. He who betrays forgets that truth has a long memory. Sipping the coffee, I surveyed the room, couples chatting about love, families laughing, tourists snapping photos. The world moved on, but I was in a different orbit, waiting for the reckoning with the quiet confidence of someone who has already said goodbye to what once was. At 9:30, Michael appeared, face tired, eyes slightly puffy, trying to mask it. Good morning, honey, he said, kissing my cheek. Good morning, I replied softly. He sat down, ordered orange juice, and spoke of trivial plans, the boat ride, dinner, the drive home. I listened, studying him in silence. His hands fidgeted. His eyes avoided mine. Guilt has a language that doesn't need words. At 10 o'clock, his phone buzzed. "I love you." Emily's voice was soft, desperate, almost, before she hurried down the hall, disappearing around the corner. Michael lingered only a few minutes, checking his phone as if the glowing screen could shield him from what he'd just done. When he finally left the room, I stepped aside, letting him pass without a sound. As soon as the hallway was clear, I slipped inside. Her perfume still floated faintly in the air. The lipstick on the wineglass. The wrinkled sheets. Every detail was a confession without words. I retrieved the camera, stopped the recording, and skimmed through the footage. Their laughter, their touches, their whispers, everything laid bare. I felt no tears, only a strange, measured calm. A clarity that settled into my bones. I placed the device in my purse and headed to the lobby, where he sat pretending to scroll through messages. "Did you confirm the reservation?" I asked. "Yes," he murmured, eyes darting away. "Everything's arranged." "Perfect," I said, gently touching his shoulder. "Tonight will be unforgettable." He smiled, the smile of a man who believed he still controlled the narrative. Hours later, locked inside the bathroom with my laptop, I uploaded every file to a secure cloud, then sent it all to 3 addresses: his office downtown, his business partner, and Thomas, Emily's husband. No turning back. No regret. When evening came, I wore the blue dress he once adored. My reflection looked different, not broken, not uncertain. Just free. The Laura who had stayed silent for far too long no longer existed. The woman walking into dinner now carried truth like a blade. And that truth, every kiss, every lie, every betrayal, was already on its way to the inboxes that mattered. Tomorrow, their facades would shatter. And I would be gone. The next sunrise glowed gold over the water, but it brought no peace. By 6 a.m., I was awake, sitting by the window, listening to the waves crash. Michael slept deeply, unaware that his life had already begun unraveling. Time ticked loudly around me. Each second reminded me that the day had arrived. At 7:30, I had breakfast alone. I wrote a single sentence in my notebook. "Those who betray forget that truth is patient." Families laughed around me, lovers chatted, tourists planned their day. I sat with quiet certainty, waiting for the collapse. At 9:30 he appeared, hair still damp, wearing his usual tired smile. "Morning, sweetheart," he said, brushing a kiss across my cheek. "Morning," I murmured. He spoke about trivial plans. A boat ride. Lunch. Souvenirs. But his hands trembled just enough to betray him. At 10 o'clock, his phone buzzed. He snatched it instantly. "Who is it?" I asked. "The front desk." "Dinner confirmation," he lied. I nodded. "Don't be long." He left, keys in hand. By the time he'd taken 5 steps, he was whispering urgently into his phone. I stood, placed a few bills on the table, and followed. The resort's hallways were lined with mirrors that distorted every reflection, a fitting metaphor for the life he'd been living. He reached the room, glanced both ways, and slipped inside. I waited a moment, then moved to the far end of the corridor, where a decorative mirror let me watch the door discreetly. At 10:20, Emily arrived. White dress. Wide-brimmed hat. The walk I had seen in my home too many times. Michael opened the door with a smile so wide, so warm, it burned. He kissed her hand. She giggled. They slipped inside. Their silhouettes passed by the window, 2 people drunk on lies, not love. Their arrogance radiated more strongly than their affection. I took out my phone. Checked my email. The file had been delivered. His boss. His business partner. Thomas. Everything was in motion. But I wasn't done. I walked toward the room and knocked twice. Silence. Then a frantic shuffle. Laura, his voice cracked behind the door. No answer. More clumsy movement. The door opened. Two faces drained of color. Emily's blouse half unbuttoned. Michael pale as chalk. What are you doing here?" he stammered. "I thought I'd see if the room was as comfortable as you described in your messages," I said calmly. Emily froze. "Laura, please, I can explain." "I'm sure you can," I replied softly. "But I don't need to hear it. You already explained everything in front of the camera." Michael's eyes widened. "What camera?" "The one you didn't notice," I said. "Just like you didn't notice me." My phone vibrated, message after message. His boss. Thomas. His partner. They'd received the truth. "There's no turning back," I told Michael. "Laura, please," he begged, stepping toward me. "We can fix this. We can talk." I raised a hand to stop him. "There's nothing left to say." "I love you," he pleaded. I laughed softly, a hollow, tired laugh. "No, Michael. You love yourself. And not even well." Emily's voice trembled. "Laura, please don't do this." I met her eyes without blinking. "You did this to yourself. My husband, my family, you should have thought of that before betraying the woman who welcomed you into her life." For a moment, silence filled the room. Only the hum of the air conditioning cut through the stillness. I looked at them and felt a surprising calm. No yelling, no tears, just the quiet weight of justice. "Don't worry," I finally said. "I'm not here to watch the chaos unfold. I just came to say goodbye." I grabbed my bag, walked to the door, and added lightly, "And don't bother deleting anything. It's already in the cloud." I closed the door without glancing back. The hallway stretched before me, but my steps were steady. With each stride, a burden lifted from my shoulders. In the elevator, I pressed the lobby button and caught my reflection in the mirror. No rage. No sorrow. Only resolve. When the doors opened, pandemonium had already started. Thomas, Emily's husband, was shouting into his phone, the video playing on full screen. Guests stared, frozen. A few seconds later, Michael sprinted down the stairs, Chloe following. His face was panic-stricken, eyes searching desperately for an escape that didn't exist. Thomas lunged, striking him while yelling in fury. I watched calmly as the employees tried to separate them. The chaos was complete, yet I felt a strange serenity. The ending they had written for themselves was now unavoidable, and I was free to walk away. Outside, the ocean remained calm. The wind smelled of freedom. That morning, the resort became their downfall. I finally became my own salvation. That afternoon, I locked myself in my room while commotion continued below, hurried footsteps, ringing phones, murmurs. The recording had spread like wildfire. I didn't feel guilt. I felt justice. Turning on the television, I saw Michael's name flash across the local Atlanta news, tied to the word scandal. Resort security footage showed the lobby altercation, replayed endlessly, him trying to flee, Thomas hitting him, phones capturing every moment. Everything he had spent years hiding was now public. I poured a glass of wine and sat by the window, watching the calm sea. For a moment, I wondered if I had gone too far, but then I remembered his mocking laughter, the nights of contempt, the empty promises. No, I hadn't gone too far, I had simply arrived where I needed to be. As the sun set, I opened my laptop. Dozens of new notifications filled the inbox, forwarded emails, screenshots, news headlines. Each click confirmed my plan had succeeded. Among them was a message from Chloe, "Please delete this. My family has seen it. My son is crying. Don't do this to us." I read it 3 times. I didn't reply. Once, I might have felt pity, but not now. You cannot demand compassion from someone who never gave any. The next email was from Michael. "Laura, let's talk. This can be fixed." It was a moment of weakness. "Please don't ruin everything we've built." I smiled. A moment of weakness, he called it, as if years of betrayal could be excused as an accident. Decisions have consequences, and his had finally caught up with him. I closed the laptop, glanced at my phone. Dozens of missed calls. None worth answering. Silence had become my refuge. I lay on the bed, eyes closed, letting the quiet wrap around me like a shield. For years, his voice had filled every corner of my life. Now, for the first time, silence felt like freedom. I don't know how long I slept. When I woke, it was dark. His phone was buzzing again. This time, I answered. "Laura," his voice was fractured, desperate. "Don't bother. We have nothing left to say. You're destroying me." "No, Michael. You destroyed yourself." I turned on the light, calm and deliberate. A long pause. Finally, he asked, "Why did you do this?" "Because I needed to see who you really are, without your lies," I replied. "And now? I'll live." I hung up before he could respond. The next morning, I walked into the resort dining room. Eyes followed me, some curious, some pitying. I didn't care. I ordered coffee, listening to the staff whisper behind their hands. One woman approached quietly. "You're incredible," she said. I barely smiled. Courage wasn't what I had in abundance. It was dignity, and no one would take it from me again. As I drank my coffee, Michael passed by. His face was swollen, tired, the dark glasses doing little to hide his exhaustion. He paused, searching for my eyes. I stirred my cup and looked straight ahead. He no longer existed to me. That afternoon, a message appeared from Thomas, Emily's husband. "Thank you for opening my eyes. I regret that your pain was necessary, but I finally see the truth." I stared at the words. It wasn't comfort, it was justice. My suffering had illuminated their deceit. For the first time in years, I could breathe freely. I owed no explanations. No apologies. Only myself. That night, before packing, I turned on the camera one last time. I spoke directly into the lens, not for him, not for Emily, but for me. I am not the woman they betrayed. I am the woman who survived. And that, alone, is enough. I turned it off, packed my things, and left the resort without looking back. Outside, the air was crisp, the sky clear. I got into a taxi and watched the building shrink in the distance until it vanished. Relief and a tinge of sadness mingled within me, but more than anything, I felt peace. Back home, the door was slightly ajar. Inside, Michael sat on the sofa, elbows on his knees, face buried in his hands. The man who had once been my refuge was now a ghost. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "Waiting for you," he murmured. "I lost everything, my job, my friends. Emily, she tried to. And you expect me to feel sorry for you?" I cut in. "No, I just wanted you to know that I love you," he said, voice trembling. "No, what you loved was the comfort I gave you," I replied steadily. "Can we start over?" he whispered. I stepped closer, looking into his eyes. There was fear there, and emptiness. Michael, there's no going back. You lie to yourself so long you don't even know who you are. I finally know who I am, without you. I turned toward the door. Goodbye, I said, and for the first time, it didn't hurt. Only the truth did. The click of the front door behind me was perhaps the most freeing sound I had ever heard. That evening, I settled on my terrace with a cup of tea, letting the quiet wrap around me. This was a different kind of silence, not one born of restraint, but of liberation. I looked up at the stars and thought of something my mother once told me: a strong woman doesn't make a scene. She makes a move. And that was exactly what I had done. The news exploded like wildfire, not just in our neighborhood, but across the state. Michael, the polished executive with the flawless smile and polished speeches, was now splashed across every headline. Executive exposed, affair and intimate video rock city elite. I watched it all without flinching. Every word validated years of invisible suffering. For decades, I had lived in his shadow, seen as the quiet wife, while he was celebrated for his integrity. Now, the silence was mine, and his downfall was undeniable. Reporters camped outside his downtown office. Cameras followed his every step. Social media buzzed with every rumor and leak. Former colleagues avoided him, partners stopped returning calls. A week later, the board removed him from his position. I remember the phone call. Laura, his voice cracked. They fired me. I'm sorry, I said evenly. Are you really? He asked. No, I replied bluntly. There was only silence, then the sound of a man realizing too late that his power had been an illusion. Chloe vanished from Atlanta. Her husband left her. Her daughter moved in with her grandparents. She tried to reach me repeatedly. One night, she left a voicemail. Laura. I regret everything. I don't know what happened to me. I never meant to hurt you. I turned off my phone. Regret doesn't cleanse dirty hands, it only makes the stains wetter. I felt no triumph. The scandal, the collapse, it wasn't satisfaction. It was colder, deeper, a sense of balance finally restored. But with that balance came emptiness. Revenge, even justified, doesn't fill the spaces left behind. Silence remained. And in silence, I found reflection. I thought about the years spent surviving his contempt, his control disguised as love, his arrogance cloaked as authority. And now, when all was over, who was I? Free, yes, but alone. One day, leaving my house, a neighbor stopped me. Laura, can I say something? She whispered. Of course, I replied. You did what many of us wish we had the courage to do. I smiled faintly. It wasn't courage. It was exhaustion. Her eyes softened. I knew then that my story, though scandalous to some, symbolized countless women who had swallowed betrayal and endured in silence. Michael called again one night. Laura, he murmured. I have nothing. They took everything from me. I need you. No, I said. You need accountability. Are you leaving me like this, destroyed? No, Michael. I'm leaving you responsible. I hung up. He never called again. Days passed, and though the scandal slowly faded, its consequences lingered. His company faltered. Friends abandoned him. And I finally breathed. His name had become a cautionary tale, whispered in boardrooms and neighborhoods alike. I walked past without glancing back. People looked at me differently now, with respect, recognition. It was new. After decades of fading into the background, I had reclaimed my reflection. One afternoon, a letter arrived with no return address. Inside was a single handwritten line: "Thank you for showing me that even the strongest can fall." I never knew who sent it. Perhaps a woman who had endured something similar, or maybe someone who simply understood. I tucked it between the pages of my journal, a quiet reminder of solidarity. Sometimes people ask if I regret what I did. I tell them no. It wasn't revenge, it was freedom. For years, I had been trapped in a life that didn't belong to me, silent while lies thrived around me. When I uncovered the truth, I didn't just expose him, I reclaimed myself. That night, I walked the boardwalk. The wind carried the scent of the sea, stirring something deep inside. I thought about everything I had lost, a marriage, a friend, a life built on appearances, but also about what I had gained, my voice, my dignity, my peace. I made a promise to myself, never again would I love out of need, I would love out of choice. And if anyone asked me what it feels like to be betrayed, I would say I don't know, but I know the power of forgiving myself for allowing it for so long. Months passed. The scandal faded, replaced by fresh headlines, new gossip. I rebuilt my life among the ashes, not of grief, but of habit, of a life once shaped by a man I had mistaken for love. The first sunrise after it all was a revelation. Golden light spilled through my window. I wasn't rushing to make breakfast, iron shirts, or fake smiles. I poured my coffee slowly, savoring my freedom. The house was empty, but free of deceit. The air belonged to me. I discovered that solitude isn't punishment, sometimes it is self-love in its purest form. Gradually, I restored my routines. I painted, read, tended my garden. Each blooming flower became a reminder that life continues, even after being uprooted. Unexpectedly, I began to forgive myself, not for exposing him, not for the revenge, but for remaining silent for so long, for believing patience was virtue when it had been fear, fear of loneliness, fear of starting over, fear of admitting I had loved someone who couldn't love me in return. Forgiving myself was harder than forgiving him, but I did it. With each tear that fell, a weight lifted. One afternoon in the park, I saw an elderly couple walking hand in hand. He held her gently, as though time had never passed. For the first time in years, I felt no envy. I smiled, recognizing that love isn't found, it is built. And when it isn't found outside, it can be built within oneself. I became my own company, my own sanctuary. Later, I learned Michael had left the city, living alone in a small apartment with no family or work. It didn't thrill me or sadden me, it was merely a reflection of the life he had sown. Lies had been his seeds. Silence had been mine. Sometimes I considered calling him, not to reopen old wounds, but to close the cycle. Then I remembered, some silences speak louder than words. Mine had spoken, and in that quiet, I had found peace. One evening, while organizing my things, I discovered the old camera I had used to capture the truth. Dusty, silent, a relic of the storm I had survived. I held the camera in my hands. It no longer felt like a weapon, it was a testament to survival, a symbol of transformation. It had once been my shield, my voice, my proof. Now, it was a reminder of what I could claim for myself. For a moment, I considered erasing every file, wiping the past clean. But I kept it. Not as evidence of their betrayal, but as a monument to my own resilience. Months later, I opened a small studio in my home, voices reclaimed. Women came, young, old, broken, hopeful, to speak their pain, their betrayals, the quiet storms they carried. I shared what had taken me decades to understand. No one can save you. Only you can reclaim yourself. The voice you must hear first is your own. When one of them smiled through tears, I felt the circle of despair closing, replaced by strength. My story, once a wound, had become a bridge. One evening, as we wrapped a session, a young woman asked softly, "Ms. Laurent, did you ever fall in love again?" I paused, letting the question float in the fading light of the studio. "Yes," I said finally, looking out the window at the horizon. With myself. Her eyes lit up. I knew she understood. Life doesn't always destroy, it often clears the stage so you can step into the light unmasked. Losing what you thought was love can feel like an ending, but it's actually a beginning. True love, the kind that never betrays, deceives, or humiliates, starts the moment you refuse to lie to yourself. That was my punishment and my rebirth. I am now 63, walking through life slowly but without fear. I no longer measure my worth by someone else's approval. I love myself enough. I no longer crave revenge, the universe handles balance in its own way. When people ask how I endured such betrayal, I answer simply, I let the fire burn me, turn to ash, and from that ash, I became light again. And to anyone listening, it is never too late to begin anew. It is never too late to leave behind those who dim your brilliance. It is never too late to look in the mirror and recognize the woman you were, the woman who resisted, and the woman who still stands.